Alright, just getting to Bunnings for a couple of projects. The first thing I'm going to have to do is, because the timber I'm buying is not going to fit in the back of the Focus, I'm going to park up around the back, drag the timber around. I've got my table saw and circ saw. I'm going to cut it down to size. So here I am just cutting the framing timber down to fit into the car. My original plan was to buy a 3.6 meter length and cut that into two 1.8 meter lengths, and then a 2.4 meter length to cut into 3.8 meter lengths, or 800 mils. They didn't have any 2.4s, so I just bought two 3.6s, and then I was going to cut it into 900 mil lengths instead of 800 mils. However, I only marked out two cuts, so you'll see the confused look on my face I just had, and then I had to go back, re-measure it and cut that extra cut. The other thing I did on my first cut was I didn't set the depth low enough or deep enough on the circular saw, so I didn't get the whole way through. And I also managed to notch out a little bit of the timber behind it, but it won't make any difference. Alright, so a bit of a change of plans. I was going to grab a sheet of ply as well as framing pine, but I couldn't get it in one trip, and then it started raining. I didn't want to be sitting outside in the rain trying to work out table saw measurements and stuff. So what I'm going to do is go home, finish this project, and then depending on the weather, come back or see if I can borrow my old man's ute, because that should be able to fit the full sheet in. So here I'm just pre-drilling some holes in the framing timber before I mount it to the studs on the wall behind me. Just did this, it's a little bit easier if the holes in that are pre-drilled, just to line up everything. In my infinite wisdom, I didn't really double check where I was pre-drilling, so it turns out one set of holes didn't line up with the studs, but it was pretty easy just to get one hole, or mount one side to the stud, get the level out, which you'll see in a minute, and then drill the other side in. Alright, so here's the first angle of me mounting one of those horizontal, I'm going to call them brackets, to the wall. It's a matter of pre-feeding in the screw, lining up one end with where the stud is, drilling that end in, just one screw, then getting the level on it, leveling it out, putting a second screw in, and then just fixing, or putting the rest of the screws in. So I end up doing 2 screws per side on these. It should hold more than enough weight for my barbells. And then here, I didn't really think ahead. I was just grabbing one screw at a time, basically. I did cotton on and bring the whole tub over at one point, but yeah, definitely should have planned ahead here. And here's a second view of mounting those horizontal brackets that the vertical ones will fix to. You'll see me fiddling around with the level here. So it turns out this piece of pine wasn't straight, so the level was sort of rocking and I couldn't get a good read while it was on top of it, but the bottom seemed to be pretty straight, so I was using that to level it out, and it went on and ended up pretty level. Alright, so here I am just fixing the first vertical piece. Same sort of principle, just a couple of screws into the timbers I had already mounted. and then the hooks that will hold the bars will go on that. All right, and just the other view mounting the vertical pieces on. You'll see in a second I managed to snap one of the screws and had to angle grind it down. That happened one more time. The screws I was using to put these on were a little bit thinner gauge than the ones I'd used to mount the other timbers to the studs, just because I ran out and I was just using whatever I had lying around the garage. All right, so here I am mounting some of the hooks onto the vertical pieces. I'd already done one as a bit of a test trial. The hooks I was using are metal, so in theory they might damage the bars. So I've just used electrical tape on some of the hooks that are holding bars that have got knurling around in an area that I'm a bit worried about losing it. This easy bar and then the cambered bar that I put on didn't have any knurling where the hooks were, so I don't really care if they get scratched there or not. And to get the heights even, I just measured from the floor to the top of the hook bracket. I'm not 100% certain that my floor is level, but it'll only be a couple mil out. And when I checked the level on top of the bars, they were pretty good. So I'm not too worried, as obviously it's just for me and I'm not trying to sell it to anyone. So it doesn't matter if it's not quite right. And just another view of me mounting the hooks. Nothing too flash about this one. I don't know what I was doing here with the level. I think I was trying to work out to mount the top of the next J hook in line with that cambered bar, but then I had the thickness of the level there, making the distance greater. So I'm pretty sure I just ended up eyeballing it and it worked out pretty well. In terms of the spacing, pretty much was just eyeballing it, didn't really measure a great deal. They all fit in, and because they're just screwed in, I can easily move them. And when I finally get to the final product, I've left a bit of space at the bottom as I plan on buying a cambered squat bar, and that'll work best at the bottom. One, because it's the heaviest, and two, because it takes up the most room and is the most awkward.